You're listening to Maneuvering Mondays, a podcast about transforming work culture. And your hosts today are AK
and Ivana Rosendal.
And the theme of today's episode is happiness at work. Not the fluffy, just be positive version of happiness, but the kind that is actually shaped by how we work and how we lead. And in this context, we're going to dive into some topics building on Marie's story in Maneuvering Monday. We're going to talk about accepting what is, what beliefs can limit our happiness, assholes in the workplace, and other topics within this umbrella. This is because we do think that one of the big questions underneath Marie's journey and process at Zebra Apps is how do we create work environments where people can actually feel okay and want to show up? And to discuss this, we have invited a true expert on the topic, and that's you, Christian. Welcome to you.
For the invite, Ivana and AK. Really glad that we can have this discussion. It's not on Monday, so we don't have to maneuver to the Monday.
True.
And I just want to say that, Christian, you and I have actually been corresponding since August or so. I found some of your posts on LinkedIn and was intrigued by your way of seeing the world and how practically you write about happiness. That's pretty great. Just like taking down the whole fluff and making it specific and concrete into how you can actually make a difference in your own life now. And not just the big abstract happiness. I was really intrigued by that and happy that we're having this conversation today.
Savannah, and I've done all that, research and stuff and theory to make it practical, so you don't have to do it. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, can you tell our listeners more about the research that you've done? How did you become the expert in this field?
Well, as we know, we talked about writing, and again, congratulations for your book and its success and a good read. We'll talk about that. I've been writing since I'm 17, and my first book was fiction. It was a utopia about the search for personal happiness and the search for happiness as a society as well, right? So I've been on this topic for a very long time. I've also traveled the world, asked people how they're happy in different language and different circumstances. I've talked to, homeless people, and I've been with billionaires and ministers, seeing different lifestyle with money, with language, with opportunities, with caste system in India, all types of realities that we can live with. And talking to older people, younger people, people that have been to war. I have been to Ukraine before the war. I've been in a war-torn region during wars and after, and saw the repercussion of economic, physical, mental illness, death, grief, all those things that life exists. And I tried to figure out how can we be happy, not despite of that, but because of that, because that's also beautiful. All those things are part of our human existence, and how can we switch our narrative? I've discovered in neuroscience and psychology the narrative self and the experiential self, and how to combine them to be happier. So it's been a long journey, physically and mentally, going everywhere and talking and reading a lot and talking to experts in those fields, philosophy, mindfulness, of course, neuroscience and psychology, and figuring out what are the key factors that can help everyday people be happy in pretty much any circumstances. It sounds crazy, but it actually is true. Like, you can be happy being bankrupt, being in jail, I met people that are quadriplegic, that are happier than most people. All those stories, it's like you don't need much to be happy. You need to have the method that, and it doesn't work for everyone, but that's why I have a few concepts that help. And the ones that resonate will make. And I've helped people say that they're so much happier. And, what's even better is that when you're happy, the people around you also resonate and become happy, right? So
I love that perspective that happiness is a method.
Mm-hmm. And it's a practice, right? It's not coming for you. You don't have to seek it. You have to, train yourself.
Yeah. That's That's awesome. Also, not many people have been to Ukraine. So very cool that you have done that. I am from Ukraine originally, from like way over east.
Slide, yeah. I haven't
Yeah.
been to the east or to Odessa, but I've been around Kiev and quite enjoyed. And I've been to beautiful Denmark and Copenhagen. Next time we do a podcast, please invite me
Ooh,
to
we can do it
Copenhagen.
live. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, and we will definitely get back to what you just said. I'm very, very interested to hear more about the key factors that will help us all be happy. But before we do that, I just want to give our listeners a quick summary of the Maneuvering Monday story, because this will really help us set some context for the topic today. And I'll do it very briefly. So, in Maneuvering Monday, we follow the fictional story of Marie in Zebra Apps as she navigates the conflicts and dysfunctions that are basically threatening the company's survival at this point. And the problem is that the company has a retention crisis, and our main character is asked to find out why and to fix it. She launches this culture program, and in the process of doing this, she meets a lot of obstacles and learns that she has to pivot to succeed. We meet a lot of characters in this story, and I think that there's a lot of relevance in talking about happiness at work in this context. So that's just briefly about Maneuvering Monday. And we would, of course, love to hear a bit about the books that you're working on, Christian, currently.
So, yeah, I wrote 3 fiction novels when I was younger, 2 in English, 1 in French. The first one is this utopia about the search for happiness. The 2 others are more in a first-person, more personal quest, but also have a lot of philosophy and psychology tied into it. And I have a 4th and finished novel that I'll maybe eventually finish. That is more about it's called Hell on Earth, and it's a bit more dark. And it's in the second person. I wanted to challenge myself to write in the second person, which is quite difficult, as you might imagine. And so now I've been working for the last few years on a nonfiction series. I did some poetry in between. So I also did a poetry What's Up challenge during pandemic to help people with poetry in their lives, and had over 200 people reading and sharing poetry from around the world. And so since then, I've been working really to create this happening book series. So it's not one book, it's many books. I have chapters written for at least 8 books. So I know what's going on in the pipeline, and I'm trying to collect information. There's a lot of reading, as you see. I read your book. I read a lot of books in the last few weeks. And I'm also trying to make sure that, everything is being relevant and coherent in all the upcoming books. So 2 of the books are finished. They are not published yet. So if there's any publishers that want to have a chat, as we were talking before the live, Ivana is not a fan too much of editing, more of writing. I guess I'm the same. I can write many books. Editing, I probably need help. But we actually, my second book in the series is being a little bit edited and translated already in Spanish right now. So we're doing some fun stuff that way. So the first book is called Beyond Happy: Formulas for Perfect Days. We will have a link for pre-order on our website at awedigitalwellness.com, so AWE digitalwellness.com, very soon. And the second book is called The 4 A's: Awakening to Happiness. And the 4 A's come from, Beyond Happy is very difficult in the way that it talks about philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, some quite a difficult concept, explaining the difference between narrative self and experiential self, the difference between the negativity bias and how that false positivity or true positivity, talking about acceptance, radical acceptance in a more kind of Buddhist and Taoist way. So it goes deep into some topics and talks a lot about sociology, my travels, different cultures, how high trust culture, low trust culture, high touch culture, or low touch culture, like Japan, where you hug someone and you feel like you've committed a crime. All right. And then the reverse in Serbia and Kosovo, where someone's holding your hand so long that you're like, what is going on? And is that okay? Yeah, right? And that's good. So, all those differences in how people live are kind of fun. And Beyond Happy is difficult, but I make it fun, right? And then I wanted to, because I have a lot of concepts. We can talk about non-judgment, non-self, no mind. Some things that are sometimes difficult to grasp. And I came up with the easier concept of the 7 C's and 8 P's, right? And we'll talk about this because some of them relate to your book and your values of the Zebra Company, right? So, and even that, there's a lot in Beyond Happy, and then I figured let's make it even more practical. So the 4 A's is very easy. 4 A's, right? So everyone can remember 4 A's. The first one is awareness. Second one is acceptance. Then it's appreciation and awe, right? And we also name our company. So I'm a co-founder of a digital wellness and well-being happiness company called Awe. And awe is a very important way to be beyond happy. It's one of the way to be curious, creative. It ties into a lot of other concepts. And not a lot of people know about it. There's only 3 real scientists that research awe. I read their books, their research, and trying to incorporate that in our digital reset. So we're doing, a program on Patreon, helping people find awe in their life, in their daily lives, and find calm and peace. So not only writing, but giving practical tools for people. As we talked about before, happiness is a practice, is a method. It's not something you find. And we're trying to help the world with some of those tools, including books, free resources, and our paid Patreon for the people who want to advance and be even happier. So, just to finish about the second book, what's going on with this? It's a very easy pathway. It's actually sequential. It's awakening to happiness. But first, you got to be aware. Then you have to accept all that is. Then you have to start to appreciate. And the last step is awe, right? And I bring you through that journey in that book.
Very cool. And I can like the 4 A's resonate with me as per default, reminding me of like my process of becoming more present, energetic, and just happy and excited in my life.
Yeah.
So I have not done the research, but it does resonate what you're saying with my very low practical
skills. They're not all easy. Awe is probably the easiest if you trying to find some easy things in your life to find awe. Awareness is difficult. You have to work a lot on. Acceptance is also very difficult. People resist the reality all the time, and it's very hard to really accept everything. And appreciation is actually more important than gratitude. So in the first book, Beyond Happy, I talk about gratitude, and then I did more research. Appreciation is actually even more, and I explain why and how, right? And that's it's also quite difficult to appreciate, but we can do it.
I have a very short acceptance anecdote.
Yes.
So my youngest daughter is 9, and she had a hard time falling asleep the other day. And like what was on her mind was that whenever she looks in the mirror, she looks different than she imagines in her head. So like the image she has inside her brain is different than like the image that she sees in the mirror. And like she had so many questions about like why don't I look like I look in my own brain?
Yes.
And we talked a lot about acceptance and like the inner image you have and the outer image and like the differences between the two and stuff. It was just very cute, but also common among employees in the workplace. The picture you have of yourself, how you show up, how you deliver, can be different than what everyone else experiences around you. So, like calibrating what actually exists in the real world, that's a challenge.
Well, and accepting that it might not be what you think it is, right?
Yeah.
That is probably not what you think it is, actually.
Yeah.
And I also really enjoy the fact that what you guys are doing, not just with the podcast and the book, but like helping the workplace, because I think that's also a way that we can impact more people, right? So one people can read a book, one person can do a reset, but when you can help the organization as a whole, hundreds or thousands of people, and create a culture where everyone is happier. Right? We talked about the goal of this episode is happiness at work, right? So how can we bring people happy themselves, but also make it contagious and make teams and make structures that help people be happy, right? So that's definitely something that we also, are caring about at all. And really, I did some HR. I'm still doing some HR, even though I shouldn't. But we're still a relatively small team, so I'm doing a lot of HR, and talking to other HR leaders and teams. And this human capital, this not only capital, it's human potential that we have is so great that we can do so many things when we have the right people doing the right thing for the right reasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And part of like my motivation for starting Maneuvering Monday in the first place was this experience that you cannot build a great team if each individual isn't trying to show up in the team. So like, man, it all stops with the individual anyway, like no matter what you do. So it has to integrate.
And thanks for sharing the story about your daughter and self-perception and acceptance. Acceptance also, just to clarify to people, it's like, well, should I accept everything? Should I accept domestic violence? Should I accept a bad salary? Should I accept war? Should I accept right? So it's not about accepting anything it's about accepting that it's now this, and you cannot do anything about this now, and then you can start doing something positive about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you feel that you're not healthy and that you can lose weight, okay, accept it and then go. If you feel that you shouldn't be in war and you shouldn't be violent, then be peaceful, right? So, but today is this, right? Accept that today and the now.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. I think we are ready to start diving into Maneuvering Monday and applying some of the concepts from your body of work, Christian, to some of the stories in the book.
For sure.
So I would like to start us off with the first section, where I want to talk a little bit about Shaine. So Shaine is one of the characters in Maneuvering Monday who is a relatively new hire to Zebra Apps, the company. He was hired in from a competitor, and he's a software developer. He is very opinionated, he's a bit obnoxious, and there's this other character called Willie in the book who gets so pissed off at Shaine that he does this whole stunt that impacts the whole company. But from Shaine's perspective, he's just a brilliant guy who is misunderstood and not fully utilized, and somehow he's just frustrated that no one listens to him when he obviously has all of the answers. So for Shaine, I would be curious, Christian, if you could talk a little bit about this difference between the narrative self and the external self, but also what could we say about Shaine that might help him find more of his own happiness in his work?
Great question, Ivana. I think there's two levels, right? So one in the book deals into what an organization should do with someone like him, right? Mm-hmm. So how to reward him or not, place him in some and have some of his, because he has some skills. He has, of course. Yes. Yeah. So how can the organization do that? But I think that your question is more like at an individual level. So if I were to talk to him like I'm coaching a client, I would probably try to figure out, first of all, what help people get intrinsic value from their being, their work, and their contribution. You found me on LinkedIn. I did a post, I think, recently about another book I read that talked about Adler's philosophy, and one of Adler's key to happiness is contribution, right? So, and contribution is what you give to the world. And also, I have a lot of problems with people talking about happiness in terms of love and in terms of respect, right? So respect, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, the songs from the 70s. Well, everyone needs to be respectful. I'm not respectful. I'll disrespect. But what do I mean by that, right? So I mean that your respect is subjective, right? So what's respect? It's really subjective. Especially if you travel the world, what you do in some culture is respectful and another is disrespectful. So what's respect, right? So I think we need to define those terms a little bit better, to have a better communication, collaboration, which we talk in the book as also collaboration, communication, and better understanding, right? So and the other part is love. And again, how do you define love? Adler defined love as something that we would say like unconditional love, right? It's about giving without expecting something in return. And most love that we talk about, romantic love, is jealous love. It's love or hate love. It's selfish love. It's conditional love, right? The real love is just giving, contributing, and expecting nothing in return, which is hard to do. But again, with practice, you can do that, right? It's a bit more similar to compassion, but compassion has other elements, and it's intention more than contribution. And compassion is one of my 7 C's of happiness. So we'll get to talk about more. But compassion is great, different than contribution. And if we talk about the character Shaine, I think what he needs is to understand what contribution is and what, inner confidence is, right? So I'm writing other books, as I mentioned. One of my future book will explore the concept of the 13 C's. So first there's 7, and now there's 13 more, right? And in the 13 C's, there is contribution and there is confidence, right? So confidence is not arrogance, and I think maybe that's kind of what he's trying to figure out. Do I need to show a bit more, or make sure that I'm doing this, or that my status, my pay, my this, right? So it's like, no, you're confident, comfortable, calm. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. And then you can contribute. And who cares if no one sees your contribution? You're doing it. That's it.
I think that's awesome advice for Shaine. Just also, like, for this character, I wish that he would find some calm and just, like, shoulders down.
But I was also curious. I think you mentioned this earlier in our talk now about the narrative self and the experiential self. Would you mind elaborating a bit on that?
So very concretely is, right now we're having a good conversation. I assume we're all smiling and happy. And then at the same time, we might be thinking, who is going to watch this in the future? How do I look? Like, that's the narrative self talking in the same time as you're experiencing, right? And then after, like later today, you will think about that podcast and say, oh, in that moment, I enjoyed it or not. But it's different than the experience, right? And the problem, let's say, with some of the things that we do in our generation is that we're not in the experiential self. So one of the 8 P's, spoiler alert, is presence. So something like mindfulness. And the presence allows you to be in that experiential self, really present, not always thinking stories about the past, the future, or how this moment is going to be perceived. And, this crave of the selfie, for instance, is you're enjoying the moment, but you're so worried about the narrative self that you're going to tell a story to yourself in the future and to your friends that you're enjoying this moment, but you're not really enjoying the moment, right? Or not to the capacity that you could, right? For instance, I did a travel way back where I think smartphones were not even there. I want to say how old I am, and I went to Eastern Europe with no camera, right? So we had the cameras before the phone. And I did a full 2 weeks with no camera on purpose. So I'm not stuck on, I need to take this to remember I'm here experiencing. And that opens more door of human connection, of appreciating awe around you, right? All those things.
Yeah. That's a great distinction and something worth noting about.
Yeah. And then in my book, I go more into the science, because there's some research actually done in Canada that did quite a bit of research figuring out what's the brain actually doing when it's experiencing and when it's narrating, right? And there's different part of the brain and how do they interact. And, basically the research says that our brain is more inclined to do the narrative self. So we have to work to be the experiential self. Most of us automatically think and make stories, and that doesn't make us happy. So one of the things I try to teach people is how to be more in the experiential self and how to use the narrative self in a positive way, not in a negative way. So there's a lot of things with that knowledge.
Just to mention from my experience, improvisational comedy did the trick for me in like being in the moment. Because if you're in your head in the narrating self, you're gonna miss what's happening in the moment, and then like you're gonna bomb on stage, all of you, your whole team, because you were in your head. That really forced me to be like, oh, I need to pay attention in the now without thinking ahead.
I've done some improv comedy, probably not at your level, but I've done quite a few. I've seen a few. I have friends in the industry, and I've researched kind of the ideas behind it, and I also talk about, I think you're familiar with the yes and right.
Yeah.
So that's acceptance, right?
That's acceptance. Yes. You're right. Yes. Yeah. This is what is now. There's a cow.
We'll go with it.
Yeah.
Very, very good. So I encourage anyone to do some improv comedy, and if you're in Montreal or in Copenhagen, let's do that together for sure.
That would be fun. Great. Also, I'm enjoying like the aspect of our conversation that is a little bit like a scavenger hunt, where we're like, "Oh, we found one more pea. We found another pea."
Yes, me too. We know there's 8 peas, and then maybe suddenly there's more.
Love it. Let's not let's keep it this way, so for the audience too, so they can have some fun with this.
So let's continue with the Easter egg scavenger hunt.
With the Easter egg hunt, yeah.
Yes, I am. I have read and made a lot of comments on this beautiful book. So I recommend it.
Thank you.
Amazing. Great. So thank you for your insights on the topic of Shaine. Now we would like to move on to talk a bit about Natalie and her journey towards happiness.
Yes.
So we have Natalie in our story. She is the CEO of Zebra Apps, and she used to connect deeply to the mission of the company, which is to build better solutions for teachers. Mm-hmm. But she did have a scary financial experience, and she started focusing only on optimizing on the financial side. And this is interesting in the perspective of happiness, because this made us think about how do we actually discover when we are unhappy in our work lives, and what is the difference between being happy in the moment and being unhappy in the moment, or being unhappy as a category.
So, as I think my concept has been proven for the years to be almost perfect, it's also one of my P's.
Another one.
So this one is called purpose, right? So it's really what's going to make an employee, a CEO happy, a person, a child even. It's to have some type of purpose. Maybe child will be a bit more play than purpose, but everything is fun. And I actually, again, I took notes, and I'm going to read a quote from Natalie, if that's okay.
Yes.
I love that.
It is during the end, so spoiler alert, but it's not so it doesn't say exactly what. Natalie stood up, fist clenched, mouth shut. She looked around. "You are idiots," she shouted. "All of you. You're completely forgotten what this company is about. We were supposed to make teaching easier for teachers, make learning easier for students. Instead, you're making slides and crunching numbers, plotting to take the company apart piece by piece," right? Love the writing, and that's what we're talking about, right? So she lost her purpose, and the whole company, because of that, lost the purpose, right? What are we doing? We're helping students learn, teachers. This is what we're doing. That's the purpose, right? And that's how she regained her happiness, is to uncover that, right? It took her a long time, unfortunately, but she did.
Yeah, and it does take her a long time to find it, like to the point where it's almost too late for everybody. Mm-hmm. But she does find, like, she finds her own way and finds purpose not in leadership, but in developing teaching. Yes. So there's something also to be said about what we're, like, society expects to be the good thing. It might be different than what the good thing is for us as individuals.
Yeah, very good character arc, and to have moments where people around her are kind of starting to see that that might be the case. We're looking about, hey, we had, those values in the company somewhere. Where are they? Not seeing them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And why did the co-founder leave? Because the values are new, right? So very interesting.
In the beginning, you mentioned that you had a thought about the values of Zebra apps.
Yes.
Do you want to share what that was?
Yes. So I have also some notes, and I believe the first is what we're talking about. Learning. The mission is to help the learning, right? So that's the purpose.
Yeah.
Then the second, I don't know in order, but there is curiosity, and that kind of like how can we find solutions, and learning is also curiosity, right? So yeah, of course, lo and behold, curiosity is one of the 7 C's, right? And
Really? I was going to ask.
so how does that apply, right? So it's about being curious in the world, right? Because when people are bored or they've seen it all, right, they're not happy, right? And even at myself, after like traveling to more than 100 countries, sometimes I'm seeing something and like I could be bored. Oh, I've seen better in Budapest. I've seen this, but in Russia it was better. And in South Korea, right? So like you can become cynical, but the opposite of cynical is constant curiosity.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's at the individual level. Now, at the organizational or at the relationship level, if I'm curious about you, Ivana, I'm going to be happy to learn what you tell me. I'm going to be happy to learn about your story, about your daughter, about your company, about your thoughts. And I'll always be curious and happy, right? And you're going to be happy that I'm curious about what you're doing, right? So curiosity is good at the individual level, at the relationship level, and at the organization level, right? So how can we, and that's a great value to have as a company, for Zebra or other companies that we work with, is to try to instill in the company, which we're doing at AWE, and I'm sure you're doing in your respective companies, is to create that ability for people to be curious, to ask questions, not to disturb, but because they're curious, right? To try other roads. Hey, I'm curious, if we go this way instead of that way, does that work? Is it better? Is it different? Right? So how can we help companies, individuals, be more curious? It is a great one, and that's one of the Zebra value. The other one, courage, right? So courage is also a 7 C's. And how does that apply from all my research? So courage comes from many traditions, but the one that holds it as the highest value, I would say, are the Stoics, right? So Stoicism have 4 virtues: justice, temperance, courage, and wisdom. And courage, to me, is the most important one. I can explain to you why justice is not, because it's also subjective, and there's also a part of the brain that makes us feel justice and injustice, but that's not the reality that we should accept. But courage is the right one from the Stoics, and it's also the right one in the sense that there is this philosophy that, we can or should have no fear, right? There's also a T-shirt that says no fear, right? Or a brand. But the concept is no fear. If you have no fear, then you don't have suffering in some, or the suffering of anxiety and fear. Okay. But, fear was good for survival. So it's almost impossible to have no fear. And fear can be information that's useful, right? For instance, I have the fear of heights. I'm a tall guy. I jumped out of the plane. I did bungee jumping, but every time I was scared. Like my body is scared. Yeah. You don't want to jump off a plane. Your body tells you no. Okay. So courage is kind of the antidote. So it's like you acknowledge, you accept that fear exists, and despite that, you still continue, right? Because you probably have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So you have a purpose, and then you have courage, even though you have fear. Then you make it happen, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
The other value that you came up with was commitment, and that's part of the 13 C's coming up.
Hey.
A commitment can be to yourself. Commitment can be to your partner. We know that the marriage rate are down, the divorce rates are up. People are not committed. People are not staying in companies more than 18, maybe 30 months, and then ciao, I have a better offer, whatever it is, right? So commitment is very important in organization, in couples, and also commitment to yourself. Hey, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it till the end. I'm gonna do it hasta más no poder in Spanish, until I cannot anymore, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to hit your head on the wall and things that don't make sense. It doesn't mean you cannot pivot, but it means if you're committed to a vision, to a purpose, then you're committed to that, not to the outcome, not to the way of doing it. You're committed to the purpose, right? So it doesn't matter if your company goes bankrupt and you have to do it again. You still have the same purpose. It doesn't matter if your relationship has a problem and you have to do it this way, because you still have the same purpose, right? So it's commitment and purpose together that allows coherence and happiness and productivity as well. Because when you have a purpose and you're committed, doesn't matter, if you're tired, if it's sick, if it's difficult, if it's hard, you're committed and you have purpose. So you're going to do it. And the last one was collaboration. That also is one of the 13 C's.
Nice.
And I wrote also about collaboration specifically in the organization. You can collaborate in a household and a community, but we're doing big collaboration where we're building rockets to go to Mars. We're building the space station. We're building the AI that's going to change humanity. We're creating companies small and big. We're doing all this. We're communicating, collaborating. This is collaboration right now, right? So these things are important. And the opposite views, specifically in business, we just had someone internally ask me, someone in our team asked me, why do you want to work with that company? Aren't they competitors? And I said, only if you see it that way. I'm sure there's ways to work with them. Yeah. So I always explain to people that we can always collaborate instead of compete, right? So we have this idea that that's kind of a low resource mindset. It's like, no, win-lose situation. I'm going to take this one. It's like, no, we can win-win. We can do things better together. And that's collaboration to me.
Oh, I love that.
And it's hard to teach people in organization, in sports teams, at school, whatnot. We're told, this is compete. People pay big money to go see people fight each other physically, or in sports games, or in competition, like singing competition, reality shows, whatever. It's all about competition, right? But we can do, and there's actually a very interesting reality show, which I don't watch many of them. There was one that I ended up watching. I think it was a K-pop reality show. And then some of the contestants just left because they didn't want to compete. And they're like, no, we prefer to collaborate, right? And of course, it's shade or whatnot. But we can have like those moments of saying, no, we don't have to compete. Why? Right? We live in 2026. We don't have to compete to live. We're not going to die if we don't compete, right?
I love that there's like an overlap between like this abundance mindset and collaboration. There's enough for everybody, and like we don't have to compete. It is not essential. It is a choice we can make to compete, but we don't have to. That's great. And
if we can compete, I would say do it for fun, right?
Yeah.
Do it internally with no high stake. Don't know. It's like, oh, let's compete and see who runs the fastest there, or who gets the most sales in the sales team. That's healthy, right? Yeah. But it's not, I'm going to cut your throat, compete, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Good. I want to return back to one of the A's, acceptance. In Maneuvering Monday, throughout the book, especially towards the end, the team debates like what are some of these core components of Zebra apps, and what is the business model, and what is the usefulness of the different parts of the organization. And especially they debate the data center. So Zebra apps built this super sophisticated data center that can process a lot of images, because the original founders' ideas were to create a video game style learning for children. They discuss if they should sell it for scraps, if they should spin it out, or just shut it down. And I am going to spoil things now, but we eventually, like the new company that arises in the ashes of Zebra Apps is actually a company that builds upon the data center as a core component. Because when the team realizes, oh, the data center is actually really good at this thing, and they invest in that thing, then it becomes a viable business. At least according to me, if I am going to imagine what happens from where the book ends. This is not an easy... Back to the story about my kid who was struggling with accepting the difference between how she sees herself versus how she looks in the mirror. How do we accept what things actually are? But also like in ourselves, but also in the workplace.
I've been in business for way too long to, I've been through reorganizations where we had to, let go of many people at the same time. I've been in merger and acquisitions, positive, difficult, fun, high growth, funding. I've seen all types of. It's my third business. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I'm consulting for others. I've been in the business world for a long time, and now I'm just having fun, right? So I'm doing things with purpose, with people that I care about, and that's amazing. But there's also the reality of, yes, we need to make money, and we need to be sustainable. And how can we accept, like the financial, or sometimes it could be the legislation that does something and change the game, right? Or it could be the competitor that does something, right? Although they're collaborators, that's not what we know. So, how and again, I really like the book, and I can say that being a nonfiction and fiction writer, I like the fact that there's a lot of like fiction part of it and interesting quirks about the people, and they feel fleshed out enough that they're interesting. And the business challenges are real, right? So everything that I read is like, okay, well, that's really plausible. People do these things or have the let's say vandalism part a little bit funny. Can happen. Don't hope it doesn't happen to many businesses. And then, so what do we do with something that we created that maybe could change purpose, right? So, by the way, at Odd Digital Wellness, we just released an AI ourselves. So, the data center becomes used for Gen AI and whatnot. So, the two first books before their release have been partly used to train our AI called Lumi.
Cool.
So if you want to learn more about the 7 C's and the 8 P's, Lumi knows about them. So that I can die in peace if ever. I don't get to talk to everyone like we do now. Lumi will replace me. No, not really. I have my sense of humor or my average looks, but that's fine. So, so to get back to the question of what the acceptance of a business is, right? So again, acceptance doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. It means actually we can be clear that this is happening, right? So there is financial problems. There is a product that's not working. There is a client that's leaving. There is a new law that's in effect. Accept it.
Yeah.
And then what can we do about it? And then what happens in the book and what happens we're going to uncover another C. What will that be?
Oh.
Creativity, right?
Hey, yes.
Right?
Good.
So once you accept, then you can start being creative. Okay, this is it. I'm not gonna assume it's not there. No, okay, now let's find a solution. Now let's be creative, right? And then we can have the artistic creativity. There's one of the character that goes and expresses artistic side, but you can be creative in many ways, right? And that to me is how business survive. Accept, create, pivot quickly, and the other thing that I have to say, I know it's not one of the part of the questions, but I have to talk about celebrating mistakes. And
yes, let's talk about that.
Museum of mistakes, right? So that's how you can become more creative, because you allow people to fail. Actually, in philosophy, in life, there is no failure. There's just growth or learning, unless your narrative self tells you that it's a failure or a success. So that means also there's no success, right?
Yes.
People
Yeah.
that have ego and think they made it. No, there is no success or failure. There's just this, and we're going, right? And then celebrating mistakes. I think I have another passage that I can read for the audience. How do you want us to celebrate your mistake? Joe asked. Mary was grateful that Joe was pushing the process forward. So how do you celebrate the mistake? You can pick if you toast, dance, high five, shout. Anything that you can do as a group in high spirits. That's how we celebrate mistakes, right? So, and then there's this whole thing about the museum of mistakes and the ceremonies, right? So I love that part, and I think that that's a very powerful way to help organizations say, hey, we're gonna do something that's not gonna work today. That's fine. Let's go. Let's do it. Right.
And very liberating. And then I'm glad that you mentioned the creativity part, because there is like, well, now that we know where we are, how do we move beyond here? Let's try something. It may or may not work, but then we'll learn. Also, I'm very glad that you bring up Willie, who is the artist in this company, who was originally a janitor. He was hired in as a janitor. Then he was retrained at Zebra Apps.
Did he go to jail or something? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he had a difficult childhood, and he was just happy to find a job and start living a normal life. And even though he does a good job as now a data center technician, his real passion is the performative arts. But he doesn't have any faith in himself to actually pursue that, because he feels like he should be grateful with just living like a normal life. And then towards the end, he actually takes the leap and tries out a career in arts. And I wanted to bring out this example to talk about limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about what limiting beliefs are and how do they hold us back? Professionally and personally?
I think they don't exist. No one has limiting beliefs. No, I'm joking.
I was like, ooh, let's get in that.
No, but actually, it's the opposite. Yeah, everyone has limiting beliefs, and if you don't, then come talk to me. But that's very rare. It's very rare. They might exist. I still do. I still have limiting beliefs. Just before I go into that, Willie, creativity. Why did he? Why be like the limiting belief is one thing, but what allowed him to have the courage to do that? And that's one of the other P's. So we found one, which is passion, right? So you mentioned passion, right? So how can you and like that's kind of a driver, right? So passion is kind of the fire, and purpose is kind of like where it's like the eternal flame. Purpose is there always, and fire is gonna kind of get you that boost to go, like, right? Willie has that, right? But what was holding him back besides he had the passion, but he had the belief that he needed to maybe had a bad self-impression about, hey, I've been in this type of situation. I was labeled this. I was in this socioeconomic thing. I was in this legal thing. I was there. I barely got to do this, and now I'm have a stable job. Why would I risk this to go to do an artist career, right? So that's a limiting belief, right? And everyone has those types of thoughts about themselves, about others, about the world in general, about their organization. I spoke to a friend yesterday. I'm working in this organization, but Chris, I want your advice. I don't think they're going to make it in 6 months. Should I stay or should I go? Right? Like, I don't want to be there when the shit crash because, right? So maybe you have a limiting belief about the own organization you're working for or working with, or yeah. And how can you switch that belief and say, well, maybe I accept that that's the case. What can I do in the next 6 months so that it doesn't?
Yeah,
right?
Yes.
Right? You're gonna abandon ship because, or so what are those limiting beliefs? Like, how can we do individually and as a team to get away of those limiting beliefs? Say, okay, let's be creative, let's be passionate, let's be purposeful, and find solutions. Right?
Yeah. And finding solutions. That's a great one because they are out there, and we can find them if we look.
And another way to explain limiting belief. So there's many, but so let's say one limiting belief, and then we can use psychological techniques like CBT or ACT to help you look at your life, look at your thoughts, look at your beliefs, look at your values, right? ACT is acceptance commitment therapy. So it looks about values. I prefer the term attitudes and mindsets than values. I think values are limiting by definition, and you shouldn't attach yourself to any values. Companies can have values, but they're also changing. But I prefer really mindset and attitudes. I think those are kind of better level of understanding of what we're trying to achieve. So in terms of what limiting belief looks like, it's a belief. So you don't know it's limiting until, I used to also write poetry and rap, right? And one of my earlier rap when I was a teenager is, "It can be done, but I've done it. Unexpectedly rose to the summit," right? So people tell you it can't be done, but then you're like, "But I've done it." So because that was limited, right? So just do action is better than just thoughts, right? So if you're not sure, just do it anyway and use courage and you'll get there, right?
That's also a way to take control of the situation, right?
Yes.
To have agency.
And when we're talking about mindset, what looks like limiting belief, you can have limiting belief at any time, and you do already today, right now. It's hard not to have any, but to have less, you should try to have a growth mindset or a flexible mindset instead of a rigid mindset, which is the things are that way, right? So if your mindset is always, well, I'm comfortable in that zone, no. Get out of your comfort zone, have a flexible mind, have a more regulated emotion, right? So if you need to find calm and peace, right, we can help you with the tools to find peace. And when your emotions are there, then your mind can also be there, and then you can be open to more possibilities.
I have a story to share in this regard. When I was a consultant many years ago, we were working on a very tight schedule. And me and my project team, we were like, this can't be done. But our project sponsor was like, okay, this can't be done. Prove to me in high detail that this cannot be done. So we went back and created like a detailed plan and what would be the, who needs how many days for what exactly. And then we were like, actually, we can do this. It's going to be tight, but it is possible.
Yeah.
And that stayed with me. Like, prove to me that this can't be done.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And the other caveat also is, people have a lot of biases in their brain, in their body, in their emotion, thoughts, right? So the danger with what you said is like, perhaps you had already a flexible enough mindset, right? But other people might take this and say, well, I know that I can't do it, so I'm going to confirm that I can't do it, right? So confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
So that was a good example that shows your resilience and creativity, but I would not recommend that to everyone.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
I think we need to start kind of wrapping up soon, and we do have like a last closing question that we want to ask. But before we do that, I have some follow-up questions to some of the things we've talked about. And one of them is, of course, that we need to do the bingo session where we find out if we covered all the P's and C's. Because I only have, in one of the categories, I only have 3 out of 8. But before that, I did want to also go back to the 4 A's from the beginning, and that we've kind of picked up upon multiple times. Because I think in the beginning, you both kind of said, awe is the easiest one, and we both do that. But I would be really curious to hear about how you define that and why it's so easy for you and what it is that you do to practice it, because I think it's a really important one, and I feel like we just bypass it a little bit.
Thanks for coming back. We do find that it's easy, yet. So actually, there is some data. There is some research about awe in the world, and it looks like some people will experience awe from multiple times a day to a few times a month, right? So it means that everyone experiences it pretty much, but to different degree, right? Now, again, we can say the same with awareness. Most people are a little bit aware. Even goldfish are aware. Dogs are aware. Okay, they're somewhat aware. Okay, but who's really aware? Again, very, very few. And then if you want to go to, and I talk a little bit about this in my books, and and in the research, like there is this concept of like non-duality or oneness, which is a little bit complicated to explain, but then it's also easy, and then it's easier to just experience. So so the way to experience oneness and awareness and to experience awe, if you guys want to, of course, is on our awe digital wellness website or Patreon. We do create some audio from 8 minutes to 30 minutes that guides you to experience awe and oneness, right? So that's an easy way. We've also done some studies, qualitative study. People say that they've cried, they've experienced awe, they've had the goosebumps of awe. So those are signs. Awe, you'll have goosebumps, you'll cry of happiness, you'll be flushed, and you'll awe creates what we just talked about, the flexible mindset. So awe makes you feel like and then your mind goes and becomes open, right? So awe is the antidote for limiting belief. And also it helps your immunology, so more cytokines, better health physically. It helps creativity, it helps curiosity, all the things that we talked about, right? So, and how do we define awe? Well, it's there's one definition that's been used to study is Dr. Dacker Keltner, who's the premier researcher in that subject. There's a few others. So he defines awe as something that makes you think beyond, right? And so it's like surprising and impressive. Let's say the simple terms like that, right? So when you find something like that, then you will be more open by default, right? So it will inspire you, right? And then, spoiler alert, I have another concept coming called the 9 A's, and that's the 4 A's. The 9 A's are going to be in the later books, and one of the 9 A's is admiration, right? So one of the ways to feel awe is to admire. So in our website, I created a free resource to help people do that in a practical way every day. I've been using it for 46 days myself. Very useful. It's called the Awe 221 practice, and it talks about admiration and gratitude and a few other things, right? So admiration is a way to find awe, and also it's one of the best way when we talked about love. How does love last for, we talked about companies, people working 2-3 years and leave. Relationship, maybe 7 years is good, but not a lifetime. Why is that, right? Couples stop to admire each other, right? So they have the initial passion. We talked about passion, the fire, maybe the purpose if you have a common purpose and kids or stuff. But then what's missing often is the admiration, right? So admiration will help in your relationship, will help in if you admire your colleagues, your work relationship. Hey, I love working with Ivana because I admire how she can do that, right? So
That's
then
how
you
I
have a good relationship, right? Exactly, right? Then you love working with each other, right? So I is defined as this, and there is Dacker looked at 8 different ways that you can come into the state of awe. So awe is kind of actually it's a state, it's an emotion. So you will feel physical manifestation of awe and mental as well. I'm at the point where I have 5 to 15 times a day.
Wow.
And then, so I've trained myself to find awe in many things, and I can help others find awe. But yeah, it's from 1 or 2 to a day or to a month, depending on how good you're at that. And it's very useful, so I recommend that to everyone. I found 8 more. So the original research was 8 ways to find awe. I found 8 more, so now there's 16, and that's in my book, The 4 A's, Awakening to Happiness. I'm also making a journal that's going to help people practice them, like not only read the theory, but actually doing it every day.
Thank you so much for that answer. That was great. So now there's only left for us to count how many things we identified in this call, and then end with the big question. So I don't know about you, Ivana, but I got 3 P's and I got 8 A's, 8 C's.
I have been less diligent in keeping count.
So yeah, there is only 7 C's, but I gave you 2 of the
No,
13.
but in the third, like in
The second 13 C's. So
in the second,
yeah, we got pretty much. I think we're missing one of the 7 C's, which is my favorite one because no one knows about it. But you'll have to reach out to me if you want to figure it out.
Oh, but I think that's I like that. I like that. We don't give it all away here. There should be some suspense. So that's great. Okay, thank you so much. Then let's move to the final part of this talk, which is about the big question.
And thank you for, first of all, again, inviting me. And just this conversation is giving me, smile, laugh, purpose. So this is everything that should, an hour and something be like, this is happiness to me. So thank you guys.
It is nice and fuzzy and warm on the inside. Well, I will ask the big question. That this is what's happening.
Good, you go.
So one of the things that I'm curious about is, in my experience, many people who are unhappy at work, they choose to numb their lack of happiness instead of actually making changes to become happy. Why does this happen? Why aren't people stepping into like the agency that they actually have to change their lives and stop being unhappy instead of trying to numb?
I would say there's 2 or 3 things going on. The first is definitely lack of knowledge. Okay, so you can't fight. You can't be expecting someone to do something they don't know, right? So people spend years in school, and they learn how to be a good employee and a good citizen. They're not told how to regulate their emotion all that much. They're not told how to be compassionate all that much. Maybe they say, "Oh, go do some community hours," but is that really cultivating compassion? They're not told how to find awe. They're not told how to collaborate. They're told how to compete. So people first don't have the good information, right? And secondly is, finding the good information and applying it takes effort.
Yeah. Yes.
People don't want to do that. I have to find the podcast with Christian, Ivana, and AK. Well, where is that? I'm going to scroll and find all the other easy videos.
Yeah.
Listen for an hour. Oh my God! Come on.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
That's the other reason people are losing, and that's one of the other mission that we're doing at Audition Wealth is help people regain the attention. Before we talked in the pre-recording, we talked about the importance of books, right? And it's because it brings you back the attention to read, to incorporate, to make. This makes me think of this, that right, and we're not with those things, with those. How are you going to understand something, right?
Yeah.
You've had half a P, not the full P.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the reason, and one of the thing also we do at all for organizations is help them understand that their employees are unhappy and unmotivated and sick and leaving because the company doesn't know that the hybrid worker or the remote worker is spending so much time in unproductive use of technology and is multitasking, looking at the phone, being this, doing that, right? Not able to concentrate on a task, right? And what makes you happy as an employee is to be focused on a task with purpose, with passion, and in the flow, like we are now.
Yes.
Right? Now we're happy, okay?
Yeah.
But we cannot have that all the days because people are not planning their days to have those types of moments. And they don't know, okay, I'm happy in this, or my employees will be happy if I give them the opportunity to do that, or my consultant or my client, right? So how are people not happy at work is that they don't have the tools and they're distracted to actually apply them, to get to know them, to get familiar and to do them, right? In a company, you should say to your employee, well, okay, this 3 hours today, you're not going to work. You're going to have a workshop about, you're going to laugh. You're going to be happy. You're going to talk to Chris. He's going to try to make you laugh, even though he's not as funny as the improv of Ivana, right? We're going to bring them together. We're going to make something happen, right?
Yeah.
So that's like caring about the mental wellness, about the team, about the communication, contribution, collaboration. And that happiness will make you more productive, will make you more creative. Doing, oh, you're happy? Hey, I'm gonna find a new solution because I'm happy. I'm depressed. I'm not gonna find anything. I have a limited belief that we're gonna, in 6 months the company is gonna be finished. Right?
Yeah.
So happiness brings the creativity, the productivity, and of course for the HR directors, decrease the cost of turnover, decrease the sickness, right? So people forget that, okay, you can look at the numbers and the budget and the sales target and this, but if the HR part is not in the top shape, you're losing all of those synergies, right? That we talked about, that you talk about also in the book, right? And we talk about Mary, which is not an HR VP, an HR leader, and that goes into engineering, and that and ends up having a promotion or doing something, we won't say whatever, but like, and you see that focus on human beings is valued, right?
Yes.
Because it brings that value.
And I think that's a wonderful, actually, way to end this episode, because that is one of the key points of the whole story of Maroonering One Day. So before we say goodbye, I want to ask you, Christian, where can our listeners find out more about you and your company?
So if you want to reach me directly, I am on LinkedIn, although I'm over 20,000 subscriber. And if I don't respond in a week, don't think I don't like you.
Fair.
Christian Dominique, Dominique, Christian CH. But more importantly, reach out to me or my team at digitalwellness.com. There's some info button there. We have a team of over 30 that are a little bit more responsive than me and helping with the marketing and sales and the tech and all the beautiful things we're building. And you can hear my funny sometimes and very awe-inspiring sometimes voice. So I'm the one doing most of their awe resets. We have other guest speakers that are writing and also doing that. So that's in Patreon, Digital Wellness. You can subscribe for free, and then we have paid tiers, and you can listen to new resets every week. And then we have a library of content specific for you, specific for different types of workers, for companies, for families, for children, for parents, and for just finding awe in general.
That's great. Thank you so much, Christian.
Nice to see you.